Okay, so for this Chapter 3 homework problem, you're going to be calculating the predetermined overhead rate. You're going to do it 3 different times. So in this one, they give you, it's a company that makes, it looks like they make swimming pool equipment. It says they have estimated that the total manufacturing overhead cost next year to be 1.2 million. So there you go, 1,200,000. It says they have also estimated that it will use 18,750 direct labor hours, $1 million of direct labor cost, and the machines that they're going to use are going to run 15,000 hours. So they've given you three different possible allocation bases. And so under the requirements under 1, 2, 3, number 1, they want you to use direct labor hours, number 2, direct labor cost, and number 3, machine hours as the base. Now for all of them, the numerator, remember the numerator is going to be the estimated overhead. So for every one of these, it's going to be 1,200,000 divided by whatever the base you want it to be. So if you want it to be direct labor hours, you're going to use 18,750. If you want it to be direct labor cost, you're going to use 1 million. And if you want it to be the machines, you're going to use 15,000 hours. So if you look down here for the first one, which is the direct labor hours, notice here's your 1,200,000, and you're going to divide that by the estimated labor hours of 18,750, and that gives you your overhead rate of $64 per direct labor hour. Under the second one, they want you to use direct labor cost. So notice it's the same numerator, except you divide by the labor cost, which is $1 million. So here you go, it's again 1.2 million divided by 1 million. When you do that in your calculator, you actually get 1.2, but then you multiply that by 100 and you're going to say 120%. That's usually how you want to state it. And then that last one with machine hours, notice again, same numerator, divide by your machine hours, you get $80 per machine hour. Okay, so for this homework problem, they're going to go ahead and give you the overhead rate, and then they want you to use it where you allocate it or you assign it. So when you click on this icon, you're going to get this little table right here. You'll notice that they've already given you the estimated overhead cost. They give you 3 different scenarios of activities of direct labor hours or direct labor dollars or machine hours, and they've already divided to give you the rate. So here's your rates, and remember how you assign overhead costs. Once you have the rate, you take the rate times the actual activity, and that's going to be your allocated overhead. That's usually how you do it. So you got $80, 120%, and 30, and under the 3 scenarios, they're going to have you change the base. So under number 1, you'll notice that they say they want you to use the actual direct labor hours, which they said they actually use 19,350. So you're going to multiply that by the rate of 80, and that gives you 1,548,000. Under the second one, they want you to use direct labor costs. So notice it says actual labor cost of 1,274,000. So you're going to take that and multiply by the rate. And remember, I said earlier in the previous slide, when you have a rate, if it says 120% of anything, you simply divide that by 100, and in your calculator, you're going to use 1.2. So 1.2 times that direct labor cost gives you 1,528,800. And then under the last one, they want you to use machine hours. So they actually had 49,400 machine hours. So you take that multiplied by the $30, which is your rate, gives you 1,482,000. So that's 1, 2, and 3. So then the last one says, briefly explain what you've learned about the total manufacturing overhead allocation to production. And really, you don't have to really write anything out on that one, but the idea is the activity does change how much you allocate to a job. So, it's very important you choose the correct activity because it will affect your overall overhead costs that you're going to put on the job, and that does affect pricing. So there could be some implications later on down the road regarding profits as well. All right, so for this Chapter 3 homework problem, they have given you that the estimated overhead is 960,000, and the estimated labor hours were 60. And they went ahead and divided those and came up with an overhead rate that's $16 per direct labor hour. It then says by the end of the year, it said that the company had actually incurred This is your actual overhead, $922,250. And then the actual labor hours was 59,500. So the two questions are, number one, by how much did the company over allocate or under allocate manufacturing overhead? And then the second question was it over or under allocated for the year, and how do we know? So to get how much to actually determine part one, you have to figure out how much was allocated. So you take the rate, which is $16 per direct labor hour, and you multiply that by the actual activity, which is labor hours, so you're going to have 59,500. And when you multiply that out, you're going to get $952,000. So that's going to be your allocated overhead. That's what you allocate. Well, you compare that with the actual overhead, and the actual overhead was $922,250. So let me just circle these. You take the difference between these two, and the difference is $29,750. In this case, it's going to be an over allocation. So they over allocated by $29,750 because they put more overhead into the job, and that's the second part. Which says was the MOH over or under? So you'd say the manufacturing overhead was over allocated. We know this because the allocated manufacturing overhead cost, which was $952,000, exceeded the actual manufacturing overhead cost, again, which is $922,250. I just took the difference there, and of course, again, that gives you the $29,750. All right, so on this Chapter 3 homework problem, you're going to get the overhead rate, and then you're also going to calculate the cost of a job. So you've got PG Industries, says they make custom designed playground equipment, and it says right here they expected to incur $627,000 of manufacturing overhead costs. So there's your estimate. The 41,800 direct labor hours is an estimate. And then the 1,170,400 of direct labor cost is also an estimate. All right, so these are all your estimates. Now the question is what's going to be your base, and this is going to give you your rate. So the next sentence says that the company allocates manufacturing overhead costs on the basis of direct labor hours. So you're going to use that 41,008 as your denominator. So that's all your budget stuff. And then the second part is going to help you calculate the cost of the job. Job 305 says they use 180 direct labor hours, 13,000 direct materials, and it says they have contracted to purchase the playground equipment at a price of 23% over cost. So let's do the first part is to get the rate. So the rate will be your estimated overhead, which was given at 627. You divide that by your estimated labor hours, which is 41,800. So here is your rate, $15 per direct labor hour. That's part one. Part two, to get the cost of the job, remember you've got to get your three product costs. So I'm going to remind you: direct materials, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead. And they've already given you two of them. So it says right here, here's your $13,000 of direct materials. And then of course, to get the direct labor, it says the cost of the direct labor up here was $28 per hour. So to get the actual direct labor cost, of course, you're going to need to know how many direct labor hours they actually used on the project. So it says they used 180 direct labor hours. So if you take 180 times that 28, that's going to give you direct labor cost, which is going to put you at 5,040. So there's your 1, 2, and then we got to get the third product cost. Well, your third product cost is your allocated overhead. So you take the rate, which is $15, and you multiply that by the actual labor hours, which is 180, and that's going to give you 2,700. You add those up, you get a total cost of 20,740. That's going to be the total cost of the job. Now it says if the city's going to pay for this equipment and they pay 23% over cost, all you do is you take this cost and multiply that by 1.23, and that's going to give you the cost, the price you're going to charge, which is $25,510. And that's the homework problem. This is similar to problem 19A. Okay, on the final one, very similar to the previous one, you're going to get the overhead rate, and then you're going to calculate the cost of the job. So you have to go ahead, and I clicked on the icon. This icon up here has all the information, and it says they make a variety of engines. says at the beginning of the year, and here's going to be your overhead stuff, it says they estimated overhead for the coming year to be 356,400. They're going to use 27,000 direct labor hours. It says they pay their employees about $24 per hour. They just finished a job, 371, consists of 2 engines. It says the cost and the hours of the job consisted of, you got 16,500 in direct materials and 120 direct labor hours. So under part 1, to get the overhead rate, in this particular problem, they are basing it on direct labor cost as your denominator. All right. So to figure this one out, they've given you the overhead, which is 356.4. And so to get the estimated direct labor cost, they didn't actually give you the 648,000. You have to calculate it. So if you take 27,000, which is your estimated direct labor hours, and if you multiply that by the average rate, which is about $24, that's going to give you the 648,000. So again, that's your estimate. So that's going to go right here. That's going to be your denominator. That's going to give you right at 55% of direct labor cost, or 0.55. Now, the second part, to get the cost of the job, once you get the rate, you're going to have to allocate that. So the rate, which is, again, I'm going to write this as a decimal, 0.55, you're going to have to multiply that by the activity. Well, the activity, which is direct labor hours, which is going to be, it looks like, I believe it says the cost up here, it says 120 direct labor hours, but you're going to multiply that by the direct labor cost. So the activity is going to be the direct labor hours multiplied by $24. And then once you do that, once you take that rate times your actual direct labor cost, that's going to give you your allocated overhead, which is 1,548. So you notice down here in the job, that's going to be your product cost number 3. Product cost number 1, they've already given direct materials. The direct labor cost, just like I told you before, you have to take the hours, which is 120, and multiply that by the 24, which you're going to have to do anyway to get the allocated overhead, and that's going to give you your direct labor cost, which is 2,880. You add these 3 together, and that's going to give you the total cost of the job, which is 20,940.